The 3DS is dead pretty much, a sad state of affairs, but to be honest, I was one of those who instantly dropped it the year the Switch came out. Looking back at this little console, it was on the road to being my favorite console of all time at one point. The 3D effect is the best console gimmick of all time. Fight me! And since the 3DS eShop is closing March 2023, and very soon you won't even be able to add money to your account to buy stuff, well, now is the time to pick up some games before it's too late. And what are we all about here? RPGs, visual novels. We're all about visual novels. So yeah, let's take a look at all the visual novels on the 3DS. There's not too many, and frankly, they're not all essential, but very soon, you won't even be able to find out. Let's jump back into the third dimension. Just a warning, on May 23rd this year, you will not be able to add any money to the 3DS eShop using a bank card. And on August 29th, you won't be able to add eShop credit using an eShop card either. So there's still a little bit of time for that, and if you do want to do that, there are links in the description to some eShop credit where if you purchase something, you also support myself ever so much. Thank you for your support. Let's start with Chase Cold Case Investigations Distant Memories. This is the perfect VN for you if you don't have much time on your hands. If you think stories should always be the length of a movie, then you may want to take a look at this cheap title from Arc System Works. I am half joking, since Chase really isn't anything special. It's a quick throwaway murder mystery with admittedly nice character designs from Kanasaki Taisuke of Another Code and Hotel Dusk 215 fame. Sadly, this isn't on the same level as those games, but at just $6 for an hour-and-a-half experience, you probably shouldn't expect too much out of this one. It's a 3DS exclusive that I believe was supposed to set up the story for a much larger sequel, which has yet to materialize. But yeah, in a few months, this game is going into the vapor. The same could be said for the Parascientific Escape series, 3 short games of the escape room variety. Think 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. Separately, you can buy Cruise in the Distant Seas, the first game, Gear Detective, which is its sequel, and Crossing at the Farthest Horizon, which is the final game in the trilogy. Expect about 5 to 10 hours each to complete these 3 games, solving puzzles in stories that of course include psychic material. Can't go wrong with a bit of sci-fi, going back to save the past, that kind of thing. Apparently the first 2 games are kind of separate, but the third and final game bring them together narratively, which sounds pretty cool. I think I'm going to need to grab these 3. They're less than $5 each on the UK eShop, and I know they're not going to fill the escape room void that, we all need filling, but they may scratch the itch just a little bit. Maybe one to take a look at. The original Phoneix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy may have been around the block somewhat. Wonderfully, it's available just about everywhere, and rightly so. But the 3DS version of 1, 2, 3 may be worth a look too. It's often fairly cheap, but also offers that sweet, delicious 3D effect. Sure, they hardly went to town with that. It's basically 3 layers, the text box, character sprites, and then the background, but that is enough to add that extra dimension to this 3DS release. Now, it is available digitally, but only available physically in Japan. Interestingly enough, that Japanese release does have English, but of course, it's only playable if you have a Japanese 3DS. Thank you, region locking, or I guess you could mod your console. Links are below if you fancy that. The physical version, not the modding. No, Nintendo, don't sue me. Apollo Justice would be the 4th Ace Attorney game. This one was originally on the DS, but also saw a touch-up for the 3DS. This was also critically acclaimed, although not quite as much. It seems that people weren't wholly fans of the new protagonist Apollo, filling in for the very lovable Phoneix Wright. But I think over time, people warmed up to Apollo eventually. Phoneix Wright Ace Attorney Duel Destinies is the 5th game in the series and the first to be initially developed for the 3DS. The previous games were all upgraded ports. This has 3D models this time around, which works surprisingly well, making the characters even more animated than ever. Many critics consider this to be the best in the series up to this point. Sadly, it only released digitally, so you better be quick, as there's no sign it will be ported to modern consoles right now. And the same could be said for the next entry, Phoneix Wright Ace Attorney Spirit of Justice, the 6th and not so final Ace Attorney game on this list, but the last game in the mainline series even to this day. Yes, when are we going to get Turnabout Trial 7? Either way, once again, more of the same great stuff, and once again only available digitally, which is a massive shame. I hope they can bring out the second trilogy of games to the Switch and PlayStation consoles in the future, but if not, this is your only way to play. But wait, there's more. Because before those two new 3DS games, our lovable lawyer showed up in a crossover game with the equally loved Professor Layton, mashing the two series together. Equal part puzzle, equal part courtroom trials, or witch trials in this case. Thankfully, on the strength of the casual pull of Layton, this one did receive a physical version on the 3DS and is still exclusive to that system, one of the best and most unique exclusives that it has to offer. Now we've got 7 Ace Attorney games out of the way, let's talk about an all-time classic otome on the system, Hakuoki Memories of the Shinsengumi. I've got to be honest, this series gives me a bit of a headache because there are so many releases of this game, all with different names and often with slightly different content. How Memories of the Shinsengumi compares to other releases, either on the PSP or Vita or the other million consoles it's on, I have no idea, and call it laziness if you want, but I prefer to call it being unqualified. It's not my area. But what I do know is that this is often the otome game that gets people into the genre. It's not massively heavy on the mushy romance, there is a decent story in here, even if you take the romance away. This is available physically in both North America and Europe. Well done, Axis Games, you're always a bunch of legends over there. It's often debated if Corpse Party is a visual novel or not. I can't say I've played it, so I'm basically relying on good old VNDB to tell me that it is, but I'm not convinced. But either way, it's worth a mention. And just like Hakuoki, it's a game or series that greatly confuses me as an outsider. Many different variations of the same game, plus some sequels and variations of that too. But for the 3DS, I'm pretty sure what we have here is the second remake of the first game, which includes extra chapters not seen before in the PSP release. This is a survival horror game that's both cute and creepy at the same time. It's supposed to be a really rather good survival horror game, one of the better on the system, that is for sure. However, good luck picking up a physical version. It only released in North America and goes for quite a lot of money these days. Very expensive. Zero Escape Virtue's Last Reward is the second game in the Zero Escape series. While many say that you'll enjoy this game more if you play the first game, 999, personally I didn't, or at least not a lot. Yet I still massively enjoyed this game standalone. Here, a bunch of misfits wake up in a warehouse and are forced to play a game of life or death, or of trust and betrayal. You are teamed up randomly with the other characters and have to solve fantastic escape room puzzles and then decide whether you want to betray the others for your own benefits or not. You're presented with so many branching paths here, a fascinating story with a great robotic rabbit as a villain. There are times when the info dumping gets a bit weighty early on, especially with the explanation of the rules and such, but if you can power through that, you've got yourself an incredible time, one of the best on the system for sure. Great puzzles, great story, what more could you ask for? Well, how about great voice acting and music with a top translation to boot? It does use a 3D effect, but it's mostly kept subtle rather than a huge feature, but I definitely appreciated it. I am a massive fan of 3D. It was available physically in both Europe and North America. Links are below if they're still available. Zero Time Dilemma is not always considered a visual novel due to some technicalities, bullshit technicalities. In fact, VNDB doesn't even list it. While I personally think they're being a little bit pedantic, Zero Time Dilemma is very much worth talking about regardless. This one is set between 999 and Virtue's Last Reward, and goes for a more cinematic approach to its storytelling, but features the same kind of gameplay you'd expect and love, even including some fan-favorite characters from the past 2 games. This was only available physically in North America, at least the English language version, of course. Sadly, it's been taken off the eShop, so physical is the only way right now. Or of course, you could play on the other consoles that it's on. Petit novel series Harvest December is a large compilation of short-ish visual novels. They were released episodically in Japan in 4 batches, I believe, each one representing different seasons, starting with winter and ending in autumn. But here, for the Western release, they've bundled them together into one package showing 13 stories on the main menu. They follow a continuous story of a love triangle. The presentation is minimal, but I do like the quaintness of it all. Having the image on the top of the screen, the descriptive text on the bottom, I quite like it a lot, even if this love story isn't quite my cup of tea. This bundle is still available on the eShop, so grab it while you can before the servers go down. Officially, it is not available anywhere else in English. This is the only place, guys. Jake Hunter detective story Ghost of Dusk is one of the games in the fairly long-running series of decent enough detective games. These have never hit the big time in the same way as something like Ace Attorney, but they've always trundled along quietly in the background. I actually quite like the anime neo-noir art style going on here, and it's always appealed to me about the series. If you want to solve a murder mystery in a supposed haunted mansion, then this may be the kind of pulpy detective game you so desire. I think I might have to get this one. This is exclusive to the 3DS. It was available physically, and the US version is still fairly accessible, but the EU version seems almost mythical at this point. I'm not even sure it exists. If you want the US version, check the links below, or you can go digitally too, but that's still a premium price. I think a discount is needed, guys. War and Romance is an exclusive to the 3DS. I believe it's only available on the European and UK eShops. Can't seem to find it in North America. Interestingly enough, this came out in 2020, well after the system was abandoned by any sane developers out there. Here we have an ambitious historical VN set in the Middle East. Unfortunately, it's a mixed bag with poor visuals, marring what could be an interesting topic and era. Still, maybe one to complete the collection, but maybe not. And there we have it, VN fans. Will you be picking up these for your visual novel collection on the 3DS, either digitally before the store dies, or will you gun for some of those physical releases? They're getting a bit pricey now. I'd love to know your thoughts. Remember, there is eShop credit in the description that you have until late August to add to your 3DS account. Please check some of our other stuff that we've got related to this kind of thing. Vita, VNs, physical ones. Maybe you're interested in that. And of course, the Nintendo Switch. Who could forget about that one? We'll see you guys over there. Take care.